What if someone told you that the luxurious Lekki you see today, with its shining buildings and fancy lifestyle, was built on sweat, blood, and tears? Would you believe it? This is a real story of how Lekki came to be. A story of loss, betrayal, and survival. The place we now call Lekki was once known as Maroko, a crowded slum where over 3,000 people lived. Most of the residents were low-income earners, civil servants, artisans, and fishermen, while outsiders saw Morocco as a poor and dirty area for the people living there. It was home, a place filled with family, culture, and hope. The story of Morocco. Morocco was located on low-lying land surrounded by water. This made it what people call a lowland island. Being below sea level, Morocco often flooded whenever it rained heavily. The water from the surrounding sea and lagoons would rise and the community would be left waterlogged. In the 1980s, the Lagos state government, under Governor Lateef Jakonde, decided Maroko needed to be demolished. The governor believed that the area was dangerous for people to live in because of the constant flooding. He said it was necessary to clear Maroko to protect lives and property. But the people of Morocco disagreed. They saw the proposal as a threat to their lives and homes. They protested against the demolition, refusing to leave. Governor Jakonde listened to their concerns and paused the plan. For the rest of his time in office, the demolition of Morocco did not happen. The tragedy of 1990. Things changed in July 1990. Nigeria was under military rule and Brigadier General Raji Rasaki was the military administrator of Lagos State. Unlike Governor Jakonde, Rasaki made no effort to talk to the residents or find out how the demolition would affect them. Without warning, Rasaki announced on the radio that Morocco would be demolished. He gave the residents only 7 days to leave. People were shocked and confused. They had nowhere to go, and the notice wasn't enough time to make plans. When the day came, bulldozers arrived, guided by armed soldiers. The destruction was brutal. Homes, schools, and businesses were turned down. Soldiers used violence to force people out. Families were beaten, young girls were assaulted, and many people lost their belongings to looters. It was a day of chaos and pain. Some residents tried to resist, but were met with force. Others fled, carrying only what they could. Bloodshed and destruction filled the streets of Morocco, leaving the community in ruins. What happened next? After the demolition, the people of Morocco were left homeless. Families that had lived there for decades suddenly had nowhere to go. Many moved to distant places like Okokomaiko, Ajangbadi, and Isashi, where life was harder. Some had no choice but to sleep under bridges or in open spaces, exposed to rain and harsh weather. The government had promised to resettle the people in places like Ilasan and Ikota, but these areas were not fit for living. The houses had no roofs, windows, electricity, or clean water. Residents had to deal with floods, snakes, and diseases in these swampy conditions. Children dropped out of school because their families could no longer afford it. Many young people turned to crime or prostitution to survive. Families were torn apart, and the pain of losing everything pushed some people into depression and despair. The real reason behind the demolition. It soon became clear that the government's main goal was not to protect Maroko's residents from flooding, but to take over the land. Under Nigeria's Land Use Act of 1978, all land belongs to the state government, which they can use as they like. The government declared Maroko public land and began sand filling the area to make it dry and usable. But instead of giving the land back to the original residents as promised, they sold it to wealthy people and companies. The land that once belonged to poor families was now used to build high-end areas like Lekki Phase 1, Oniro Royal Estate, and parts of Victoria Island. The rich and powerful took over, leaving the poor with nothing. Adding to the injustice, a judge named Justice Legali Ayerinde ruled against the evictees, saying their case had no merit since their homes had already been destroyed. Ironically, a major street in the new development, Legali Ayorinde Street, was named after him, forever linking his name to the tragedy. Lekki today. Today, Lekki is a symbol of wealth and success. It is known for its fancy apartments, luxury malls, and beautiful streets. But behind the glamour lies a sad history. The bright lights of Lekki shine over the ruins of a community that was destroyed for profit. Maroko's story reminds us of the cost of progress when it is driven by greed and power. The people of Maroko lost their homes, their community, and their dreams, all so that others could profit. Lessons from Maroko. The tragedy of Maroko is more than just a story from the past. It teaches us important lessons about power, justice, and fairness. It shows us how dangerous it can be when leaders ignore the needs of the poor and vulnerable. Governments must learn to balance development with compassion. Building new cities and creating wealth should not come at the cost of people's lives and dignity. Maroko's story is a reminder that true progress is not just about building fancy structures, but about respecting and protecting all citizens. A warning for the future. As we admire the beauty of Lekki today, we must never forget the pain and suffering of the people who once called Maroko home. The story of Maroko is a warning to future generations to prioritize fairness and justice over greed. Let Maroko's story inspire us to create a better future, a future where progress benefits everyone and not just the rich and powerful.